Q&A Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the National Podcast, recorded at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @Q&A Review, that is @ CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@qnreview.com. That is INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
From the National, Sunday, 12 January 2025. From the news section. Glen Sannock's ferry to enter errand service as CalMac deals with snacks. This article has been written by Laura Pollock. The long-awaited ferry Glen Sannock's will enter service and begin carrying passengers on Monday. Operator CalMac has confirmed those snacks mean one of its decks will not be in use. Originally due for delivery in 2018, the ferry and sister ship Glen Rosa have endured a saga of costly delays and technical problems at shipyard Ferguson Marine. Glen Sannock's will serve Arran and operate from Troon, South Ayrshire, with the Caledonian Isles ferry forming the other part of a two-vessel service to the island from Ardrossan, North Ayrshire from March 28. The 3,000-ton Glen Rosa is due to be handed over in September, and costs for the two vessels are expected to be more than triple the original price tag of £97 million. However, a report on Saturday suggests this handover will face a further delay due to spring 2026. CalMac said it is still dealing with a small number of issues on Glen Sannock's, including oil contamination in a hydraulic system, which has forced the closure of a mezzanine deck. The ferry operator says the closure will not affect capacity because of low demand over the winter period. Duncan Mackison's chief executive of CalMac, said great effort has gone into getting MV Glen Sannock's ready for service on Monday. It is testament to the commitment of people at CalMac to Arran that we have been able to reduce our original schedule for familiarization and meet an ambitious target for entry to service. Launching a new major vessel is akin to buying a new built house. You can move into a new home while some small snags are fixed, and we can operate MV Glen Sannock's whilst we address a small number of minor issues that have no bearing on the safe operation of the vessel or the experience passengers have on board. We are excited to welcome people on board and look forward to seeing a vessel which will bring great benefit to Arran and her service for the local community. Discussing the reported delays to Glen Rosa, Ferguson Marine's interim chief executive John Pettigrew said, "No one wants to see the swift and safe delivery of Glen Rosa more than Ferguson Marine, and work is progressing on the vessel at pace as we speak. Now that Glen Sannock's has been handed over, it's crucial that we take time to review our plan for the delivery of Glen Rosa. As such, we are currently undertaking a lessons learned exercise alongside our Scottish Governance sponsored team, Lloyds, MCA, CMAL and CalMac. Only once this exercise is complete, we'll be able to provide a final estimated completion date for Glen Rosa." This article has been written by Laura Pollock. From the National, Sunday, 12 January 2025. From the news section. John Swinney rejects Nicola Sturgeon's independence of radar claim. This article has been written by Hamish Morrison. John Swinney has rejected claims from Nicola Sturgeon that independence is off the radar now. The First Minister slapped down comments made by his predecessor, but once saying he was focused on making independence an overwhelmingly popular concept in Scotland. Appearing on the BBC's Sunday show, Svenny was asked by host Martin Geisler whether he agreed with Sturgeon's comments in the Financial Times. Svenny said, "No, I don't think it is. I think what if we talk in this interview about the economic circumstances that we face, I think it's pretty clear that economic management in the UK and economic opportunity is deeply flawed and deeply weakened because of the folly of Brexit. Now the way to sort Brexit is for Scotland to become an independent country and rejoin the European Union. That will open up economic opportunities for our country. It will crucially allow us to have our approach to migration, which will actually be in our economic interests other than the folly that's been pursued by the UK government. Swenny said there should be a Northern Ireland style deal for Scotland, according to the terms of the Good Friday Agreement, which maintains the fragile peace in Ireland. There can be a unification poll if the UK government identifies sustained majority support for the reunification of Ireland. The First Minister said, "We have now got a situation in Northern Ireland. For example, there is an accepted means by which the constitutional status of Northern Ireland can be changed. There can be a border poll. But there is not apparently the possibility of such an opportunity for a process and a route to exist for Scotland, and that's not good enough, and that's not appropriate for a democracy. Collins' journey to independence would be similar to that of the journey to devolution, Swenny predicted, saying that the referendum held to create the Scottish Parliament was a confirmation of what he said was the obvious will of Scots. He said, "The priority for me is to demonstrate that beyond any doubt that Scotland wants to become an independent country, and that's how Scotland will become an independent country because that's what's happened with devolution. Although we had a referendum in 1997 about devolution, it was plain to anyone's view that Scotland had decided we wanted a parliament. We wanted a parliament that was powerful within the UK and that was absolutely demonstrable. Nobody could stand in the face of that, and I need to get the independence arguments into exactly the same shape and independence support into the same shape, and that's exactly what I'm doing." This article has been written by Hamish Morrison. From the National, Sunday, 12 January 2025, from the news section. John Swenny vows to remain as First Minister until 2031. This article has been written by Laura Pollock. John Swenny has vowed to remain as First Minister of Scotland until 2031 if SNP win the Holyrood election next year. Swenny took over the top job unexpectedly in 2024 after the resignation of Hamza Yousaf. Swenny returned after a year-long sabbatical, as he describes it, following his 9-year tenure as Deputy First Minister to Nicola Sturgeon. At the time, SNP was slipping in the polls, but recent polls predict Swenny is on track to lead a pro-independence majority in 2026. When asked by the Sunday Mail if he would remain in office following the election, Swenny said, "That would be my plan. That's what I'm intending to do, dependent obviously on the judgment of voters. I decided not to stand for the party leadership when Nicola Sturgeon stood down because I felt I needed to move on. I was very tired mentally and physically, and I was leaving office really quite happily. But I benefited for the 12 months that followed. I never really understood the benefit of a sabbatical before that, but I emerged feeling strong and with a new perspective on the job. I think people probably look at me today and see a different character in the way I am handling things." The First Minister also said he could win a majority unlike when he led the SNP from 2000 until 2004, admitting he wasn't ready to lead at that point in his career. He said, experience is fundamental. I have now served in a number of very demanding senior government roles, and I also have the benefit of that year out of the front line, which gave me the time to reflect. When I became First Minister, I didn't have much time to think about it. I had a very abrupt decision to make. I made it as quickly as I could, but since then, I've had the opportunity to draw on all of what I learned, and I know I did the right thing. Addressing Operation Branch Farm, which the party is still waiting on the outcome of, Swaney said, the party today is recovering. We've had big setbacks. The general election in July was a real blow to us. But I am determined to respond in a dignified and considered way that is focused on the future and where the party is heading. He also told the paper he speaks regularly to Sturgeon. Yes, we keep in touch. Yes. This article has been written by Laura Pollock from the National, Sunday, 12th January 2025. From the news section. Poll S&P predicted to make Westminster recovery after boost. This article has been written by Hamish Morrison. The S&P have been projected to win back 24 seats based on new polling which predicts Labour would fall short of a majority at the next election. Labour support is on 29%, with Reform UK on 24% according to research by Opinion. The Tories have 23% support, the UK-wide survey found, with the Lib Dems on 10%, the Greens on 9%, and the SNP on 2%. This would give Labour 316 seats in the Commons, short of a majority, while Reform would get 44 seats, according to projections from Stats for Lefties. The Twitter/X account projected that Labour would lose 95 seats at the next election if the results were borne out in reality, while the Tories would pick up 32 seats to take their total to 153. The results would mean the Lib Dems would stand to lose 6 seats, giving them 66 MPs, while Reform would gain 39 seats to take their total to 44 seats, the analysis said. The SNP would make a convincing comeback from their drubbing at the last election, gaining 24 seats to take their total to 33 MPs. If replication in an election, the results point towards Labour having to enter into a coalition with one of the smaller parties to stay in power. The poll will be a boost to the SNP under John Swinney's leadership, with the First Minister this weekend pledging to remain in post until 2031 if his party wins the next Holyrood election. The results will also be encouraging to Nigel Farage if short of his ultimate ambition to become the UK's next Prime Minister. A poll last week put Reform neck and neck with the Labour Party. An analysis of the results predicted Farage's party could expect to win between 149 and 209 seats, making them either the largest or the second largest party against Labour. Despite winning a huge majority at last year's election, Labour's support has been described as shallow, and the party faced the prospect of being booted out after 5 years if Keir Starmer and his top team are unable to turn things around. This article has been written by Hamish Morrison.
From the National, Monday the 13th of January 2025, from the news section. Foreign Secretary David Lammy caught on secret visit to Israel. Report by Xander Elliards. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy has undertaken a secret visit to Israel, officials in that nation's government have revealed. The Labour government has been silent on any plans for Lammy to visit Israel, despite reports last summer that he was planning to go and hold meetings with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, among others. At the time, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, declined to comment on the media reports and said that any travel arrangements will be set out in the usual way. However, photographs of Lammy in Israel have now been shared by multiple Israeli government officials on social media, while the FCDO has said absolutely nothing. In a press release issued by the UK Government Department on Sunday, plans for Lamy to travel to Saudi Arabia to discuss support for Syria were laid out. It said that meetings will be attended by the interim foreign minister of Syria, Asad al-Shaibani, as well as representatives from Bahrain, Egypt, France, Germany, Iraq, Italy, Kuwait, Jordan, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Turkey, UAE, USA, EU, League of Arab States, and UN. It now appears that Lamy travelled from Saudi Arabia meeting to Israel in secret. The UK government has not mentioned the trip or any meetings or on any of its relevant social media channels or through any press releases. In contrast, Lamy's trip to Saudi Arabia has been publicised on his own social media channels and shared by the official FCDO account. The UK Embassy in Israel has shared a speech from Ambassador Simon Walters, but does not mention Lamy. Walters was pictured at Ben Gurion International Airport alongside Lamy, an Israeli ambassador to the UK, Tzitz Hotovely, in a post shared by the Israeli official. "Welcome to Israel, Foreign Secretary," David Lamy, Hotovely wrote. "Looking forward to deepening the UK's Israel partnership and to advancing our shared priorities. Wishing you a productive and meaningful visit." Gideon Sa'ar, Israel's foreign minister, also revealed the visit on social media. "Pleasure to host in Jerusalem my British counterpart David Lamy," Sa'ar wrote, sharing an image of the two together. "We discussed a wide range of issues, including Syria, Lebanon and the Iranian threat. I emphasise Israel's intent on securing a hostage deal in Gaza. Israel is a pillar of strength and stability in the region and will remain so. It is not clear, beyond Sa'ar and Hotovely, who Lamy has met on his visit. It is understood that a meeting with Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer was also in the diary. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is wanted for arrest by the International Criminal Court amid allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza. Amnesty International has described the situation in Gaza as genocide, a term which Lamy has refuted, suggesting in contrast to international law that not enough people have been killed for it to qualify. Lamy's visit to Israel comes after Annalise Dodds, a member in the Foreign Office, also went to Israel. Last month, Dodds met with counterparts in the Israeli government, but the Labour administration has refused to say exactly who. While the meetings are still being kept secret, the FCDO did publicise Dodds' visit ahead of time. They do not appear to have done so with Lamy. SNP MP Chris Law told The National that the Foreign Office was seemingly releasing information as it deems necessary. "Of course, it's not the first time they've done this," he said. "We have been following this previously with Annalise Dodds. We've asked follow-up questions to which we still had no reply." He added, "Either this is an issue with a failure of communication of the Foreign Office, or there are questions to be asked of those representing the Foreign Office and government." On Twitter/X, Law shared an image of Lamy in Israel and wrote, "Once again missing in action. Even the UK Foreign Office don't know he is here according to their media output. Thanks to Israel for finding him." Earlier in January, written answers from Foreign Office Minister Hamish Faulkner revealed a series of meetings that Labour ministers had held with their Israeli counterparts. The Foreign Office declined to comment on Lamy's whereabouts when asked on the phone. An email inquiry has not yet received a reply. After this story was published, Lamy posted on Twitter/X about his meeting with Sa'ar. And that article was written by Xander Eliards. From The National, Monday the 13th of January. From the news section, Glasgow Parker Hannafin factory targeted in Gaza protest. Report by Lucy Jackson. Pro-Palestine campaigners have targeted a factory in Glasgow which supplies parts to a weapons manufacturer used by Israeli forces in Gaza. Activists from Palestine Action Scotland targeted the offices of Parker Hannafin at Seaforth Road South on Sunday night, where they damaged several windows and sprayed the building with red paint. Protesters said the factory produces military parts which it supplies to weapons manufacturer Leonardo UK, which makes military products such as their F-35 fighter jet used by Israeli forces in Gaza. The manufacturer's site in Edinburgh has been targeted multiple times by activists, but this is the first time Parker Hannifin has been targeted in Scotland. Activists said that Parker Hannifin is involved in the design, development, testing and production of the F-35 jet, supplying fuel systems and other components. They added that the company also provides systems for military helicopters and drones. Protesters said they sprayed the building with red paint because it was symbolic of the Palestinian blood on the hands of the company. A spokesperson for Palestine Action Scotland said, "We are sickened that the continuing genocide is made possible by companies based in Scotland that are happy to profit by designing, making and selling products that result in the mass murder of Palestinian people in Gaza. Every company that chooses to be part of the supply chain to Israel's military, including Parker Hannifin, shares responsibility for and profits from the shedding of children's bodies in Gaza, and we will not rest until they cut all their connections to that chain of brutality. By carrying out this action, we intervene directly to disrupt the flow of technology that enables the ongoing genocide. Parker Hannifin has blood in its hands and will remain a target until it cuts its ties to complicit companies, including Leonardo, and stops supplying essential parts and materials without which apartheid Israel's weapons could not cause the horrors being committed every day against the Palestinian people. In taking this action, we have been inspired by and acted in solidarity with our friends and comrades in Gaza and throughout all of Palestine, from river to sea. We look forward to celebrating the liberation of Palestine with you in the near future." A Police Scotland spokesperson said, around 3:15 a.m. on Monday, 30th January 2025, police received a report of vandalism to premises in Seaforth Road South, Hillington Park, Glasgow. Inquiries are ongoing. Parker Hannifin has been contacted for comment. An article was written by Lucy Jackson. From the National, Monday the 13th of January 2025, from the news section, exclusive. I went on the new MV Glen Sannox ferry to Arran. Here's my verdict. By Steph Braun. I said I wouldn't get excited about this boat, but here I am. After waiting so many years to see the MV Glen Sannox come into Brodick Pier, Arran resident Shona Redmayne couldn't contain her anticipation as she got up early to see off her sister who was travelling across to Troon. I spoke to the 64-year-old after coming across on the maiden voyage of the vessel, and, while there were plenty of journalists on board sarcastically saying it's a new ferry, it works, I couldn't help but also feel a wee bit of excitement. Redmayne said it was unbelievable to see her come into port, adding she felt like she was dreaming, having waited years for the moment to happen. I think that's what made the day feel so significant. Many had come to believe it may never arrive amid huge delays, soaring costs, and streams of bad headlines to go with it all. I stepped onto the vessel, having already spoken to people in Arran who I know are so desperate to see the back of all the negative press the ferry fiasco has received. The Glen Sannox has arrived at around 6 years late, having run into a saga of problems alongside its sister vessel, the Glen Rosa. With all that in mind, it felt special when the ship pulled away from Troon, and I hope it's the start of a better future for Islanders. A lively group of early birds appeared to be toasting to that anyway, already with cans of Tennent's in hand before 7 a.m. She had some zip about her as she sped across Brodick, and it wasn't long before she received a good test of her core strength as we hit extremely choppy waters. Redmayne told me at Brodick this is what she's hoping the Glen Sannox will bring. More steel amid stormy conditions. I feel confident she will deliver. I was quite glad to have a bit of a nosy around the ship before it became pretty impossible to walk in a straight line. Having sailed to Arran a few times before on both the Isle of Arran and the Caledonia Isles, it was great to be on a shiny, much more modern looking ship. The other two vessels, while they will always hold a special place in the hearts of the people of Arran, they are showing their age. The Glen Sannox, however, was pristine with comfy seating and a superb big window at the front, so that, when it isn't dark and dreary, as it was for us, passengers can enjoy superb views across to Scotland in miniature. If you prefer to be outside, there is ample seating up on deck too. What was notable about the new vessel was the number of working lifts on board, of which there are 4. I could not recall having been on a CalMax ship with so many lifts before, and it was confirmed to me that this is a new feature by passenger Leslie Duncan, who explained those vessels with lifts only usually had one, and it was for disabled people. In choppy conditions, it was pretty handy having it available, rather than trying to fight with heavy doors to get in and out. Duncan and her friend Elaine Smith were handed the honour of being the first passengers on board the ship, and, while Elaine struggled with the journey amid feeling seasick, Duncan said she thought the ship was smart and was pleased to see the lifts. "I think it's absolutely stunning. I think they've done a great job," she said. "It's great having the lifts as it makes it much more accessible for people. There's only been one lift on most of the other ferries for disabled people only, and they have often not been working. My dad was in a wheelchair for years and we always had to check in advance if they were working." Passengers will also be mighty excited, I imagine, about the sizable canteen on board, given they will have sailed on the MV Alfred, which has minimal hospitality facilities, or the Isle of Arran recently, which does have a canteen but is a considerably smaller ship. A full Scottish breakfast can be yours along with a selection of morning rolls. I was also reliably informed the famous cow mac and cheese will be served at lunch and dinner times. How could it not? If you're looking for something to take away from the journey, the gift shop is full of great souvenirs like cuddly Calmac lines and treats including lovely toiletries from Arran Aromatics, along with spirits from the island like gin and whiskey. This was a spacious, comfy vessel that was easy to navigate, and it was clear she could cope well in the strong winds. Though I would recommend travel sickness tablets if you're not equipped with sea legs. Facing up to breakfast was a slight chore. I was lucky to have the chance to have a small peek at the bridge on the way back as well, which, having seen the bridge in the Loch Seaforth before, looked much flashier. The captain seemed at ease with his ship having survived some amount of swell as we closed in on the mainland. By chance, I did manage to spot a golden plaque just above the set of stairs between decks which awkwardly said, "MV Glen Sannox, launched in 2017 by Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister of Scotland." Many from further afield than Scotland will wonder what that is all about, and what on earth took so long. For those on Arran, I think they're as keen as anything to leave the past in the past and sail onward. Here's hoping the Glen Sannox can hold her own and give the beautiful island of Arran the steely and shiny service it deserves. And that article was an exclusive by Steph Braun, and it was read by Ian McKenna. From the National, Monday the 13th of January, from the politics section, exclusive. Labour breaks silence to dismiss Holyrood call for Scottish visa scheme. Article written by Xander Elliards. The Labour government has definitively ruled out considering any action on a bespoke Scottish rural visa in response to a Holyrood vote calling for one. The Home Office slapped down the calls from a majority of MSPs after an SNP government motion and a Green amendment passed last Thursday. The motion called for the UK government to accept the rural visa pilot proposal to ensure that the needs of Scotland's employers, communities and public services are fully reflected within the immigration system. The Green Amendment added calls for Labour to remove the no recourse to public funds, NRPF, conditions that limit the support and services available to many, especially those seeking asylum. The majority calls from Holyrood came after the Scottish Labour Deputy Leader Jackie Baillie, speaking before the general election, told the Herald that a new Labour government would be open to talk with ministers in Edinburgh about a Scottish visa. Previously, a UK Labour government introduced a bespoke Scottish Fresh Talent scheme to allow university graduates to stay in the country for 2 years. However, the Home Office said it was not considering a reboot of the idea after suggestions from a Scottish Labour MP last October, and has issued a similar dismissal to the Holyrood motion. A Home Office spokesperson told The National, "We are taking action to link the immigration and skills systems to better address gaps in the labour market. Whilst migrants make a valuable contribution to Scotland and the wider UK, we are not considering this policy." Responding, SNP MSP and former Minister Emma Roddick said Labour showing a blatant disregard for Scotland's bespoke immigration needs is incredibly disappointing but not surprising. She went on, Scottish Labour's Deputy Leader Jackie Baillie signalled during the general election campaign that Labour was open to talks on a Scottish visa, but since coming to power has refused to engage in any discussions on the matter. The SNP has long called for a Scottish visa to address labour shortages in Scotland due to Westminster's hard Brexit and anti-immigration policies, neither of which Scotland voted for. The SNP will continue to push Labour to come good on its election promise and address the unnecessary damage caused to our economy and public services, including the NHS. Green MSP Maggie Chapman said, Scotland should have the right to make our own decisions on immigration and to reach out to the world around us, and a rural visa pilot is a crucial part of that. Brexit has been a disaster for Scotland, both in terms of the impact it has had on prices and the cost of living, but also in our right to live and travel across Europe, and for people from elsewhere who would choose to come here for love, work or education. She went on, a lot of businesses and communities across rural Scotland have been hammered by Brexit and the devastating impacts it has had. The people of Scotland did not vote for Brexit and do not support it. Keir Starmer knows this. He was one of those who led the movement for a referendum to reverse the decision. She added that NRPF is a particularly racist and cruel policy that has no place in any humane migration system. Nobody should be made homeless, forced into destitution or have their human rights ignored, regardless of their immigration status, Chapman said. NRPF puts people in danger and prevents them from accessing essential lifeline services in times of need, leaving them open to exploitation. And the article was an exclusive by Xander Elliards. From The National, Monday the 13th of January 2025, from the news section, Nicola Sturgeon announces split from husband Peter Morrell. Article written by Xander Elliards. Former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has said that she and her husband Peter Morrell will split. The former SNP leader made the announcement on her Instagram on Monday morning. In a post headed Personal, Sturgeon wrote, With a heavy heart I am confirming that Peter and I have decided to end our marriage. To all intents and purposes we have been separated for some time now and feel it is time to bring others up to speed with where we are. It goes without saying that we will still care deeply for each other, and always will. We will be making no further comment. Sturgeon and Morrell first became a couple in 2003, announcing their engagement 7 years later in January 2010. The pair married at a ceremony in Glasgow's Oran Moor in July 2010, while Sturgeon was Health Secretary and Deputy First Minister. She was 39 and he was 45. It was confirmed at the time that Sturgeon would be 100% be keeping with the name with which she had become notable in public life, with an SNP spokesperson saying she did not wish to become the artist formerly known as. Sturgeon would be going to become SNP leader and First Minister after the independence referendum of 2014 and Alex Salmond's subsequent resignation. During her nearly 9 years in power, Sturgeon and Morrell would become known as the most powerful partnership in Scottish politics. The news of the split comes after Morrell was charged in connection with embezzlement amid an ongoing police investigation into the SNP's finances, dubbed Operation Branchform. Morrell, who was the SNP's chief executive from 2001 to 2023, was charged by police in April 2024. Sturgeon has also been arrested and questioned by police investigating the SNP, but was released without charge in June 2023. Earlier this month, Leading Scottish Defence KC's Thomas Leonard-Ross predicted that the state of play meant that Sturgeon would not be charged amid the Operation Brandform probe. In December, Sturgeon said she knows nothing more about the investigation than she did when arrested. Speaking after being released by police in June 2023, Sturgeon insisted beyond doubt she was innocent of any wrongdoing. And that article was written by Xander Eliards and read by Ian McKenna.
From The National, Monday the 13th of January 2025, from the comments section. Decriminalisation of drug use in Scotland will eradicate underworld. Article by Tommy Shepherd. The UK's first drug consumption room opens at last today in Glasgow. As everyone involved is at pains to point out, this is not a silver bullet to solving Scotland's drugs problem. It is one part of a solution, but a part that until now has been hindered by out-of-date laws and political opposition. It shouldn't have taken this long. Since 2016, the City Council has been petitioning the Home Office for permission for this project. It has been consistently refused. 3 years ago, the focus shifted to getting Scottish prosecutors to effectively agree to turn a blind eye to the technical breaches of the law required to operate the facility. Once that opinion was confirmed, it took a further campaign to get the UK government to agree it would not intervene if the Scottish government gave the go-ahead. And now it is open. The centre is being run as a 3-year pilot, but if successful, I predict it will not only become permanent, but also lead to many more similar facilities across Scotland and the rest of Britain. We know having a safe place to take your drugs means that fewer people die as a result. This is the universal experience of every country where this has been tried. 5 years ago, I saw this firsthand in Germany and Portugal as part of a parliamentary inquiry into how other countries deal with drug problems. The Glasgow Centre opens with a welcome drop in the level of criticism based on uninformed prejudice which can often accompany this debate. Yet still, there are those who try to suggest the money is misplaced and ought to be diverted into rehabilitation. This is a false dichotomy. We need both, and safe injecting spaces can help get users into rehab. Although the figure is coming down, the number of drug deaths in Scotland remains terrifyingly high. Nearly 100 people lose their lives each month, and few, if any, of these deaths are intentional. This is not suicide. These deaths are entirely preventable. Most are the result of people not knowing exactly what they are taking or the effect it might have on top of other drugs or conditions. Most people die alone behind closed doors. By the time they realise there is a problem, it is too late to call for help. Safe injection facilities where people can consume their own drugs hygienically and with help on hand won't stop people accidentally taking a bad dose. But it will mean that if they find themselves suffering cardiac arrest or other problems as a result, they can be treated there and then. Centres such as the new one in Glasgow have multidisciplinary teams that not only medical staff but also access to advice and help on housing, employment and money. And there are people to talk to, many of whom will have experience of using, about how to get off for good if that is what you want. But the importance of the supervised facility is to stop people dying at the point of use, to keep them alive long enough to stabilise the chaos in their lives so that stopping taking drugs becomes an option. Too many people die before they can get the option of rehab, which is why the Tory attempt to put one approach against another is so despicable. I wish the Glasgow venture well, but it is only one step on a longer journey. We need now to press with renewed vigour for changes in the law. The law in question, the Misuse of Drugs Act 1969, is entirely reserved to Westminster and has not been reviewed for 55 years, even though the scale and nature of the problem it seeks to tackle has changed beyond recognition. The biggest single reason why there are supply problems from drug use is that the current law places the entire supply, distribution and sale of them in the hands of criminals. There are probably still people who believe that prohibition prevents those who might want to try drugs from doing so. They are deluded. There is not a town in Scotland where you cannot get whatever drugs you might want. In most places, you can order online and have them delivered. Even with a regular and trusted supplier, you have really no idea what you are buying. Trading standards do not apply, so there is an element of taking your life in your hands. But the main problem with prohibition is that it criminalises the users too, creating an underworld beyond the reach of the law and health service where people are unwilling to ask for help because of social stigma and the real threat of arrest and imprisonment. That is why decriminalisation of all drug use is essential if we are to effectively help those who develop addiction and other problems as a result of using. Many countries are now moving in this direction. Doing so in Scotland ought to be the responsibility of our elected parliaments, which is why the whole area should be devolved so that the classification and regulation of drugs can be done by the same institutions who have to clear up the mess when it doesn't work. And that article was written by Tommy Shepherd.
From The National, Tuesday the 14th of January 2025, from the politics section. Keir Starmer called out for AI tweet after Edinburgh supercomputer betrayal. Article written by Adam Robertson. Stephen Flynn has called out Keir Starmer for a tweet he made about his commitment to AI, despite Labour's U-turn on funding for a supercomputer at a Scottish university. We previously told how Labour were warned by the SNP that developing supercomputers in England after axing a pioneering project at the University of Edinburgh would be a betrayal. On Monday, Prime Minister Starmer set out his AI action plan as he aims to boost economic growth and announced the UK's government's pledge to increase the UK's computer capacity 20-fold by 2030, including building a new supercomputer. Labour previously pulled £800 million in funding from a similar project in Edinburgh just months ago. Writing on Twitter/X, Starmer said, "My government's plan for change will be turbocharged by AI." The SNP's Westminster leader Flynn replied, "He's going to be raging when he finds out who cut the funding for an £800 million supercomputer project in Edinburgh." The university had already spent £31 million on the building housing for the exascale computer when funding was announced in October 2023 by the then Tory government. The proposed plans for the supercomputer would have made it one of the most powerful machines in the world, and it would have been 50 times faster than any current computers in the UK. SNP MSP for Kirkcaldy, David Torrance, previously told The National, "Just a few months after coming into office and promising to deliver growth, the UK Labour government has pulled the plug from the ground, breaking £800 million supercomputer project at the University of Edinburgh, undermining Scotland's world-leading data, AI and tech sector. Deciding now to develop this technology elsewhere would be another betrayal from this UK Labour government towards Scotland." And that article was written by Adam Robertson. From The National, Tuesday the 14th of January 2025, from the news section. The Fry Awards 2025. Scottish chippies named among UK's best. Article written by Andrew Smart. 5 Scottish chippies have been named among the best in the whole of the UK at a prestigious award. The Fry Awards, which take place annually, highlight the best takeaways in restaurants serving fish and chips across the country. After months of judging by mystery diners, the eateries were assessed on a range of metrics, including food quality, premises cleanliness, staff expertise, value for money, ease of ordering, and social media presence. Only the establishments with the highest scores were awarded with the pass mark this year, being 96% or above. The Garryock Fish Bar in Inverary, Red Clock Fish Bar in Stonehaven, Quintiliani's in Lark Hall, Sea Salt and Soul in Aberdeen, and the Café Royale in Annan were named among the best fish and chip takeaways in the whole of the UK. Catch and Giffnock was also the only Scottish establishment named in the Best Restaurants category. Reese Head, competition organiser, comments, "Congratulations to this year's award winners. Another year has passed, and once again these shops have shown resilience, adapting to today's challenges with remarkable dedication. At a time when inflationary pressures are being felt, these businesses continue to stay positive and prioritise their customers, maintain exceptional standards, and find innovative ways to keep fish and chips affordable. Starting the year as award winners is a fantastic way for fish and chip shops to kick off 2025, setting the tone for a successful year ahead. Whether served in a restaurant, a takeaway, or from a mobile unit, the Fry Awards prove that quality fish and chips can be enjoyed anywhere." And that article was written by Andrew Smart. From The National, Tuesday the 14th of January 2025, from the news section. More than 456,000 Scots to receive winter heating payment. Article written by Nick Forbes. More than 456,000 people on low incomes are due to receive winter heating payments, WHP, this year to help them through the long cold winter months. Ministers will tell the Scottish Parliament on Tuesday. Social Justice Secretary Shirley Ann Somerville will say the £26.8 million being spent on WHP in 2024 to 2025 more than triples the average amount invested by the UK government in cold weather payments, CWP, in each of the 7 years before WHP was introduced in 2022 to 2023. Speaking before the announcement, Mrs Somerville explained this was because the winter heating payment is paid to low-income households, whatever the weather. The CWP is paid only when temperatures fall to or below 0 degrees Celsius for 7 consecutive days. This demonstrated, Ms Somerville said, that the government was doing more to support Scots through the winter months. Under the winter heating payments, all low-income households in Scotland will receive an annual payment of £58.75 this year to help with heating costs during the winter. Ms Somerville said, "When we asked people, they told us they overwhelmingly supported the removal of the cold spell requirement for the UK government's CWP. Our winter heating payment breaks the link with arbitrary defined weather dependency and provides financial support no matter the weather. This means low-income households will automatically be paid and do not have the uncertainty of waiting for weather readings for 7 consecutive days before receiving a payment." More than 453,000 people got winter heating payments last winter from the Scottish Government, thanks to an investment of £25 million. This winter we will invest even more, £26.8 million for winter heating payments. That more than triples the £8.5 million provided on average by the Department for Work and Pensions in each of the last 7 years, prior to the introduction of our payment. Our winter heating payment is a very clear example of how this Scottish Government is doing more to support the people of Scotland throughout the long, cold winter months. Miss Somerville will also tell Parliament that Government is set to invest more than £65 million in total across its 3 winter heating benefits this year, including the Child Winter Heating Payment, CWHP, Pension Age Winter Heating Payment, PAWHP, and WHP. The CWHP supports disabled children and young people and their families who have higher energy needs due to a disability or health condition. 37,000 payments totalling £9.3 million have been made under the CWHP scheme so far this year. Meanwhile, the PAWHP provides payments of £200 or £300 to people of pension age who receive certain benefits. The government is expected to bring forward regulations to ensure that for next year all pensioners in Scotland will receive at least £100 to help them heat their homes. And that article was written by Nick Forbes.
From The National, Tuesday the 14th of January 2025. From the comment section, analysis. Will Rachel Reeves have to resign as Chancellor? By Politico reporter Hamish Morrison. Rachel Reeves' voice stuttered and shook as she addressed the Commons on Tuesday afternoon. Her day had presumably started with an inspection of the front pages of the London papers most of which focused on speculation about her position. She looked and sounded rattled as she told MPs of her recent trip to China. A reasonably assured tone at the beginning gave way to stammers within seconds as Tory heckles began to sting. Readers of The National will have little sympathy for Reeves' plight, especially given that responsibility for much of her economic woes seems to lie squarely at her feet. Not to mention the swingeing cut she's said to be considering so as not to break the precious fiscal rules. But it must have been humiliating for her to listen to Keir Starmer's press conference on Monday, where he pointedly refused to back her position, leaving that for his spokesperson later in the day. And it must have been truly humbling for her, a member of the party which made so much hay out of Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget, to be compared to the former Prime Minister in the Daily Star's front page, which asked if they might need to buy another lettuce to see who'd last longer. Dry your eyes and we'll get to the point. Is she or ain't she for the chop? There are two main schools of thought here. Firstly, there is the argument that getting rid of the Chancellor shields Starmer somewhat from the general sense of doom and gloom engulfing the Labour Party at present. If this were the route the government wanted to go down, they'd be better waiting until things looked like they were picking up. Then, Starmer could get toss out Reeves, open a few windows to clear out the stench of failure, and attribute recovery to his genius move to replace her. But there are problems with this. Firstly, in firing Reeves, he creates a potentially powerful enemy for himself and the party. Secondly, losing such a senior minister, even if such a move were to come within a year, 2 years, of Labour coming to power, would be positively reek of ineptitude. It would be crushing to the morale of MPs. Finally, there really is no obvious replacement for Reeves. The second school of thought goes something like this. Reeves' position is in no real danger, but this story is telling nonetheless. Labour have created much of their own pain over the last 6 months, and it seems they won't budge on this bizarre agenda of self-harm. For evidence, see Reeves' full-throated defence of her fiscal rules instead of a commitment not to cut public spending, after a question from the SNP's Stephen Flynn. But the blame for the dismal economic situation lies as much with Reeves as it does with Starmer. Firing her makes him look just as bad, if not worse, in the eyes of voters. Much of the noise about Reeves resigning has come from the Tory-friendly press, and it seems that for now, without any constituency calling for her to go, she will likely be safe. Mischief-making doesn't need to have a lot of substance, but it must have some. That the Chancellor resigning less than a year into government is even being taken seriously just shows how vulnerable Reeves is. Maybe she isn't for the axe yet, but 6 months ago, think just how mighty Labour thought they were. Things might get ugly for Reeves, and fast. And that was a comment piece written by Hamish Morrison and read by Ian McKenna. From The National, Tuesday the 14th of January 2025, from the comment section. Remember what those who tweet about grooming gangs don't tell you. By Junaid Ashraf. You saw the tweets, the inflammatory headlines, the outrage from Elon Musk, Donald Trump and Nigel Farage about grooming gangs and British Pakistanis. But what they're not telling you paints a far more disturbing picture of exploitation in Britain. Let's look at the actual numbers. 9 out of 10 child sex abuse offenders in England and Wales are white British, a proportion even higher than the representation in the general population of 82%. This isn't opinion. This is data from the Centre of Expertise on Child Sexual Abuse. While Robert Jenrick MP and others now loudly demand action about cases from 1997 to 2013, they conveniently forget that their own Conservative government held power from 2010 to 2024. Jenrick served as a minister overseeing these very issues. The hypocrisy is staggering. You might hear people say, yes, but are they wrong though? It's the common deflection on talk radio and social media. But this misses the crucial context. We're talking about tens of individuals from British Pakistani populations of hundreds of thousands. And let's consider the messages for this renewed focus. Trump, who infamously said he'd date his own daughter. Musk, whose father had children with his stepdaughter whom he raised from the age of 4. Are these really your champions of moral righteousness? The truth of the situation is darker and more complex than some people would have you believe. Child exploitation exists across all communities in Britain. But certain figures weaponise specific cases, knowing their inflammatory rhetoric will create lasting damage to entire communities. Hundreds of thousands of British Pakistanis who have nothing to do with these crimes feel the impact. Their daily lives become harder, their communities more isolated, their contributions to British society overlooked. Meanwhile, young women and girls, the actual victims, become political pawns, their trauma exploited not to create meaningful change but to fuel division. You want to talk about systemic failures? Let's discuss how institutions shield abusers, how establishment connections, government, media and wealth protect perpetrators. But that's not as politically useful as targeting minority communities, is it? The real question isn't about any particular community. It's about how British society as a whole confronts exploitation, how we protect vulnerable young people, how we hold all perpetrators accountable, regardless of their background or position of power. Next time you see these inflammatory posts, remember what they're not showing you. Remember who benefits from the selective outrage. And remember the victims, the young women and girls who deserve better than to have their suffering used as political ammunition. And that was a comment piece by Junaid Ashraft. From the National, Tuesday the 14th of January 2025, from the comment section. Shona Craven. Fears that unleashed AI will bite us are legitimate. By columnist and community editor Shona Craven. Presumably the timing was coincidental. On the day when Scotland's first safe drug consumption room finally opened, Keir Starmer was plotting controversial injections of a different kind. The Prime Minister's latest plan, according to the UK government's press release, is one that mainlines AI into the veins of this enterprising nation. Yikes. The promise, or is it a threat, is that artificial intelligence will be unleashed across the UK. The canine illusion feels particularly apt given the XL bully breed was created by human tinkering that aimed to create docile family pets, but instead produced uncontrollable beasts. If folk hadn't already been wary about the proliferation of AI technology and its threats to our safety, our democracy and indeed our very humanity, they would be after hearing the Prime Minister's speech yesterday. His reference to the global race of our lives and the need for fast action if the UK is to remain competitive will hardly have reassured listeners that all the necessary safeguards against dystopian outcomes will be put in place. He may be insisting that there will be safe access to the unique resource of our NHS, to those wishing to train AI technology using patient data, but many will be alarmed at the thought of giving any private companies access to this, regardless of whether it is anonymised or whether aggregating it would serve a greater good. His claim that greater use of technology will allow more time for the personal touch in public service does not sit convincingly alongside the warning of more ruthless public service cuts to come from Chancellor Rachel Reeves. The suggestion that AI will help to profile patients who are most likely not to turn up to medical appointments raises troubling questions that sound like the premise of a very grim Black Mirror episode. Commenting on Starmer's speech, researcher Dr. Stephanie Hare observed that it has been a very quick turnaround from a Tory government warning about the risk of AI destroying humanity last year to Starmer now declaring it the centrepiece of our industrial strategy. You can't scare people like that and then tell them to stop worrying about supposedly small risks, she said. Indeed. Of course, most people have their own opinions, their own rational fears, about the use of AI because it has very quickly become a feature of our lives. It's not surprising to hear that the UK Treasury has been using it to reply to emails, something we've been softened up for by companies offering live chats on their websites with bots instead of staff. What is alarming is the assertion that a 70% success rate is already as good or better than Treasury staff doing the job. Presumably, if such data is available, the worst performing human individuals could be easily identified by their computerised colleagues and a ruthless approach taken to ensuring better value for money. The Prime Minister accepts there will be teething problems in the great AI revolution he is planning, but seems more relaxed about those than he is about the headlines declaring zero growth in the UK economy, despite a raft of very unpopular early spending cuts by his government. It's easy to forget how quickly AI technology has developed in the past few years, and even the past few months. After watching a technology-themed thriller on Netflix recently, I was fascinated to see how it was received on its release by users of Reddit, who tend to be young, male, and above average tech-savvy. Cam, from the summer of 2018, tells the story of an adult performer in a live webcam site who finds her account hijacked, with live streams appearing to show her continuing to perform and interact with fans, despite her room being empty. One Reddit user recommended the film as slightly sci-fi and more supernatural than another Netflix exploration of social media and paranoia released in the same year. Further down the thread, a viewer sought clarification about whether there was indeed a supernatural twist, or the action was merely set in a super futuristic world. Less than 7 years later, a world in which a woman's body, voice and mannerisms could be analysed, recreated and monetised does not seem super futuristic at all, and while Cam still makes for engaging viewing, it's a given that AI accounts for the strange goings on. It's now so plausible that the viewer is left pondering not how this could happen, but when it will, and what codes might tip people off that something uncanny is going on. It's interesting to compare the ChatGPT text about the benefits of AI generated by Professor Richard Murphy for today's edition, with the much more dramatic and alarming script delivered by Starmer. While it's essential that our health services have humans, not computers, at the front line, one must question if those doing politics might be so out of touch with the fears of the rest of us that they need to reconsider the value of their own input. And that was a comment piece by Shona Craven. From the National, Tuesday the 14th of January, from the comment section, Steph Payton, Why Social Media Faces Existential Threat, by columnist Steph Payton. The internet has always been an anarchic space, a digital fury of conflicts mapped to the physical world. But increasingly, the world's greatest forum has been reduced to an ever more sterile, more corporate place and, if the signs from early 2025 come to fruition, more restricted vehicle for railroading far-right authoritarianism into mainstream discourse. With Donald Trump's return to the White House imminent, tech oligarchs are lining up to kiss the feet of fascists and imperialists the world over. By doing so, they threaten to dismantle the greatest means of communication our species has ever known. Anyone left on platforms such as X/Twitter and Facebook is now constantly diverted by bots, fake profiles and AI-generated slop. Meta is testing artificial accounts that drop fake likes and comments to boost engagement. X monetises popular posts, pushing grifters into the more extreme positions in the hope of a riposte from Elon Musk. And tech billionaires are preemptively preparing to shape the landscape of social media into something that works to maintain their power, rebranding globally accepted words such as cisgender as a slur, or giving a green light to racist abuse and misinformation. All of which serve to remove the social from social media. It has evolved into an unrecognisable creature from its infantile days when Facebook began as a misogynistic tool for rating women. In many ways, it has changed the internet from a vibrant and diverse carousel of websites and forums into a handful of user-driven outlets that remain firmly in the hands of the richest people on the planet, something that has always been a contradiction at the heart of it. Here is a tool that brings niche communities and ideologically aligned organisers together in a way that scares the shit out of oligarchs and exploitative regimes. The means of controlling the narrative effectively liberated from Britain's right-wing media landscape and the Murdoch empire. It seemed only a matter of time before this world, in some way, needs to be crushed. That's not to say misinformation and regressive radicalisation aren't problems these platforms face, but within that, communities have carved out their own spaces. Now the richest men of this world are knocking at the door. Historically, our access and understanding of the world has come through the lens of corporate media entities, a process Noam Chomsky refers to as manufacturing consent. Specifically, in relation to mass media in the United States, Chomsky and Edward S. Herman wrote that US television and radio are effectively and powerfully ideological institutions that carry out a system-supported propaganda function by reliance on market forces, internalised assumptions and self-censorship, and without overt coercion. With the rise of online citizen journalism, suddenly there was an alternative to this status quo, journalism, and with that a widespread challenge to many socio-economic norms and the narrative framing of global events. Without social media, we would not have known a fraction of what we do regarding the genocide of Palestinians at the hands of the State of Israel. British and American legacy media fundamentally failed to challenge the imperialism at the heart of the West's complicity, instead spending much of the early days of Israel's current onslaught removing context and painting a false picture of the conflict as a retaliatory war against Hamas, rather than an act of continued violent expansionism. The explosion of support for pro-Palestinian views as a response to Israeli bloody ethnic cleansing is, I would argue, the reason for America's threats to ban the social media app TikTok. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said as much during an event last year, where he admitted Israel had functionally lost the PR battle in relation to its ethnic cleansing of the occupied Palestinian territories. Setting aside the absolutely full reduction of the slaughter, torture and abuse of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to a PR issue, a framing that only confirms how dehumanised Arabs have become in the eyes of US leadership. Here we see clearly the danger that social media poses to the ruling class. Suddenly, the West's hypocrisy towards international law is clear and visible in a way that I don't ever recall it being so before. The consequences of dropping bunker bombs on refugee camps brought in high definition to our phones and computers. Without an iron grip on the narrative, they cannot stop the slide towards more revolutionary thinking on these platforms, whether that be on resisting the imperialist aggressors of the West, or challenging the idea that we should feel empathy for parasitic CEOs directly responsible for inhumane acts of greed. Because the fact is that social media presents a unique challenge to conservatives. With unfettered access to information, the logic of conservatism is stripped bare. The ideology of the ultra-wealthy, of capitalist success and aspirational want, is a hard sell to anyone struggling to pay their bills or heat their homes through winter. And so, instead, we are bombarded with culture war nonsense about immigrants eating dogs and transgender people lurking in bathrooms, all to take the focus away from the real sources of our contemporary misery, rampant profiteering, the destruction of local services, and the insatiable need of CEOs to hoard the world's resources for themselves. It's why the discussion around America's ban on TikTok is framed as a response to shady Chinese influence, rather than the real reason that US lawmakers fear it. It is out with their control. Rally against the corporatisation of the internet, the shortcuts of the rich who think AI can replace the labour of making weird art, and the choice to make yourself smaller in the world. For as long as we can continue making jokes about the rich dying in self-built submarines, there's still hope. And that was a comment piece by Steph Payton, read by Ian McKenna.
The National News on Wednesday the 15th of January. BBC announces new Match of the Day hosts as Gary Lineker steps down. An article written by Joshua Searle. The BBC has revealed who will replace Gary Lineker as the new host of Match of the Day. The corporation's flagship football programme will be presented by Kelly Cates, Mark Chapman and Gabby Logan from next season. It's the first time the role of lead presenter across the BBC's iconic Premier League highlights programmes Match of the Day 2 and Match of the Day Champions League will be shared by three presenters. Mr Lineker, who has hosted the show for 26 years, is stepping down this summer, but will continue to work with the BBC through coverage of the 2026 World Cup. Gabby Logan, who is also at the heart of the BBC's rugby and athletics coverage, said, "It's always a real moment sitting in the chair because it has such history. It's still so relevant to so many people now and talked about in a landscape where television has changed so much. There's an enormous responsibility to make sure that we continue to evolve while at the same time respecting the traditions of Match of the Day. People want to see the goals, they want to see the incidents, they want to see the moments everyone's talking about. So while we can tinker at the edges, the core is the football. On becoming one of the presenters, Kelly Cates, who will also continue her role with Sky Sports, said, "Once I sit in that chair and the theme music starts, I just know that's going to be a really incredible moment. I've worked with a lot of the pundits before and they're all fantastic, so I'm just looking forward to getting started. I've known Gabby and Mark really well for years, so to bring it all together, embracing the digital side of things, it feels like a really comprehensive football package for fans, and that's what makes it so exciting too." On sharing the role with Kelly Cates and Gabby Logan, Mark Chapman said, "This isn't about the three of us, it's about the three of us plus our pundits, plus our editors, plus our analysts and stats people and production people, radio and online. Genuinely, this is about all of us as a department working together." Mr Chapman, who will continue his usual programmes on BBC Radio 5 Live, including Saturdays with the iconic Sports Report, added, "I know the history of a lot of radio programmes and television programmes, and I do feel honoured to be following in the footsteps of the people that we're following in, and respectful of what they've done." Alex Kajelski, director of BBC Sport, added, "I know viewers will love these three incredible broadcasters and journalists at the heart of our football coverage next season. They're brilliant at what they do, and Match of the Day viewers can be sure that they will be well looked after as the big football points are expertly analysed. Gary has done a phenomenal job at Match of the Day for the last 26 years. He'll be missed greatly, and we will all still get to enjoy him on our screens across some of football's greatest tournaments. Outside of Match of the Day, we've got some great new shows, voices and surprises lined up for the 2025-2026 season across audio, video and digital, and we look forward to sharing them with you all later in the year. It's a truly exciting time for BBC Sports football coverage." An article written by Joshua Searle.
The National News. On Wednesday the 15th of January, iconic Glasgow building could reopen soon as council is in discussions. An article written by Lucy Jackson. Glasgow City Council is in talks to reopen an iconic building in the city centre, 5 years after it closed to the public. The council confirmed that it is in active discussions with a partner to reopen the lighthouse on Mitchell Lane, amid fears that the city risks squandering its greatest architectural legacy, the Scotsman newspaper reported. The lighthouse, one of Charles Rennie Mackintosh's most renowned works, closed temporarily during the pandemic and has not reopened since, due to financial pressures. As well as being the first public commission completed by Mackintosh in 1895, the building is home to Scotland's Centre for Design and Architecture and includes a visitor centre, exhibition space and events venue. Council bosses admitted that they have no independent plans to reopen the building due to budget pressures, but that it is in talks with an organisation to reopen the building on its behalf, including access for the public. The lighthouse temporarily reopened for the Sonica Festival in September, but the fee from the organisers covered the staff costs incurred by the council. A council spokesperson said, "The council is in active discussions with an organisation who would like to take over the operation of the lighthouse, and their business plan includes access for members of the public. However, these negotiations are still ongoing and confidential at this time. The lighthouse is currently closed to the public because the council's budget position does not enable the building to be staffed to accommodate members of the public. There are some commercial tenants in the building who have their offices located there, and they enter and exit the building as part of their lease agreements. The council does not have any independent plans to reopen the building. The lighthouse remains available for booking for events on a case-by-case basis, where the fee charged for the use of the building covers the costs to GCC to provide access." An article written by Lucy Jackson.
The National News on Wednesday the 15th of January. A driver filmed speeding at 82 miles an hour in a 20 miles an hour zone in Edinburgh sparks a police probe. An article written by Xander Elliots. Police are probing a video on social media which appears to show a driver going at speeds of up to 82 miles an hour in a 20 miles an hour zone in Edinburgh. The video shows a Honda Civic swerving in between parked and driving cars, accelerating to dangerous speeds and often crossing onto the wrong side of the road. It was filmed on Saughton Road North in the Carricknow area of West Edinburgh, Edinburgh Live reported last week. That was confirmed by police officers who on Tuesday said that they were appealing for information and witnesses following an incident of dangerous driving in the Saughton Road North area. The road has sections which are limited to 20 miles an hour. The video was shared on Instagram by the account Hoodstigs, which shares clips of dangerous driving and car crashes. It's unclear if this was the original source of the upload. Police said that they have established that the video was first uploaded on Monday, the 6th of January. The video has been deleted from the Hoodstigs page, but is still circulating on social media elsewhere. Constable Alexander Marshall from the Edinburgh Road Policing Unit said, "This was an extremely irresponsible and reckless act, not only to be speeding at over 80 miles an hour in a 20 miles an hour zone, but to also use a mobile phone filming yourself while doing so. Putting the public at risk in such a manner will not be tolerated. We are asking for anyone who may have witnessed the incident or can help identify the driver to please get in touch." An article written by Xander Elliots. The National News on Wednesday the 15th of January. An effort is underway to save a beloved Scottish treat from extinction. An article written by Laura Hannett. A beloved Scottish treat may be saved from extinction after its sole remaining supplier ceased production. Waverley Bakery in Glasgow had halted the production of both its nougat and oyster wafers used in the treat, but a new manufacturer has now stepped in to take over. However, it says it needs to raise funds to do so. A nugget consists of a wafer layered with marshmallow and coated in chocolate, but the treat has diverse versions and is known as a slider in some parts of Scotland. A single nugget features ice cream sandwiched between a single wafer and a chocolate-coated marshmallow wafer, while a double nugget includes 2 chocolate-coated marshmallow wafers. A plan is ongoing to save the delicacy, with Scottish confectionery company Aldomac stepping in. Aldomac was producing the treat 20 years ago and is ready to revive the nugget to save it from extinction. The way that we used to manufacture is no longer suitable for the modern manufacturing era, Dario Riccomini, managing director at Aldomac Confectionery, told STV. I think it is worth saving, and I think we can really raise the quality levels and bring it back to what it used to be in the 1970s and 1980s. A spokesperson for Aldomac explained that the nugget holds a special place in Scottish food and that the disappearance of the treat would leave a void in local businesses, as ice cream parlours are struggling to find the treat since Waverley Bakery stopped production. Aldomac is looking for funds to restart the production they stopped 20 years ago and to ensure its legacy for future generations. Together, we can ensure that this beloved treat continues to delight taste buds and evoke cherished memories across Scotland, said Mr. Riccomini. Let's save the nugget and preserve a piece of our heritage. The funds raised will be used to purchase the required machinery for production, secure ingredients, hire staff, and to establish a supply chain to distribute nuggets across Scotland. Donations can be made on the Aldomac website, and £10 contributions and above will include early access to freshly made nuggets and a tour of the production facility. An article written by Laura Hannett. The National Politics on Wednesday the 15th of January. Labour MPs call Rachel Reeves the temp and compare her to Liz Truss. An article written by Xander Elliots. Rachel Reeves is being compared to Liz Truss and called a temp by her own Labour colleagues, reports say. Speaking to the I paper, some Labour MPs took aim at the beleaguered Chancellor, who is fighting to stay in post amid economic turmoil and unpopular budget choices. As the value of the pound has dropped sharply and the cost of government borrowing has risen to decades-high levels, Ms Reeves is considering ruthless spending cuts, which Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has backed. However, other Labour MPs think that the Chancellor's days are numbered. We are hoping that things will calm down soon. At the moment, it feels like Liz Truss in slow motion, one MP told the Eye. The comment echoes the front page of the Daily Star earlier this week, which mocked Ms Reeves up as a lettuce and suggested she wouldn't last longer than it, echoing its headline-making joke at the former Tory Prime Minister's expense. Another Labour MP delivered an even more withering assessment, saying her nickname was Rachel from Accounts. Now people are calling her Rachel the Temp. Ms Reeves's problems have been further compounded by the resignation of one of her ministers at the Treasury, Tulip Siddique, following an investigation into links to her aunt's political movement in Bangladesh. However, amid the turmoil which put the government's plans for the nation's finances at risk, Ms Reeves was adamant of the need to swiftly search for economic growth, which Labour has made their number one goal, but so far failed to deliver in any form. Ms Reeves yesterday told the Commons, "We have seen global economic uncertainty play out in the last week, but leadership is not about ducking these challenges, it's about rising to them." But the Chancellor has the support of the Prime Minister and many Labour MPs and ministers. Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, told LBC that the pressure on Ms Reeves was unfair. "Look, the Chancellor is doing a brilliant job," he said, putting issues with economy down to global movements. "The first thing to say, as I'm always reminded, is ministers don't comment on market movements. But what I will say is that a lot of this is down to global movements in international markets. Other countries are facing similar challenges," Mr Jones said. The Chancellor's fiscal rules are the right approach from the Chancellor in difficult global economic circumstances and with a difficult inheritance that we had from the last government, he said. Mr Jones further said that there would not be a mini-budget in March, after reports suggested that Ms Reeves could be planning to use one to bring in cuts. He told Times Radio, "We've been very clear that there's only going to be one major fiscal event, Treasury language for a budget, a year. We did that in the autumn last year." Pressed on whether he was ruling out a mini-budget, he said that there would be a spring statement on March the 26th. "But we'll only be having one major fiscal event a year, the budget, and that will be in the autumn." An article written by Xander Elliots.
This is from The National on Thursday, 16th January 2025, from the Culture section. Iron Brew teams up with popular Japanese restaurant for unique Burns Night experience. By Andrew Smart. Popular restaurant chain Yo Sushi has announced that it is teaming up with Iron Brew to reimagine Scotland's national dish ahead of Burns Night. The first of its kind menu, which aims to bring together the Japanese staple of sushi and the Scottish delicacy of haggis, will be available to patrons from Tuesday, January 21st. With new research suggesting that Scots are eating more sushi than haggis nowadays, the brand hopes to bring the culinary worlds of Japan and Scotland together to create a truly unique experience. If you're looking to try something different this Burns Night, take a look at Yo Sushi and Iron Brew's special menu. Where to try this new haggis and sushi fusion menu ahead of Burns Night? Those looking to try the new fusion menu will be able to do so at Yo Sushi's Glasgow location at 85 West George Street. The menu, which includes incredible creations like teriyaki haggis nigiri and pumpkin katsu, will be available to customers for a few weeks. The new items will be launched at a special event on Tuesday, January 21st. That article was by Andrew Smart.
That concludes this week's edition of the National Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Tune Review and Tell your friends about our service.